All right, hello everybody. Mayor Bagley couldn't be with us tonight, and also Councilmember Waters is unavailable, but we're still going to trudge along and do our good work for the city. I'm Aaron Rodriguez, the Mayor Pro Tem, so I'll be running the show. So I'd like to call this meeting of the City Council regular session, July 27th, 2021, to order. Sorry, I just had to do that. We'll get going here with the roll call, please.
Mayor Bagley. Councilmember Christensen.
Here.
Councilmember Hidalgo-Faring.
Here.
Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Councilmember Peck.
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Waters. Mayor Pro Tem, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Now please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, just as a reminder, anyone wishing to speak to provide public comment will have 3 opportunities to do so during this meeting. The first call public invited to be heard, there will be 2 ways the public will be able to participate. First, for those appearing in person, you will get the first go after you all have had your say, and we've gotten through that list. Then we'll move to a call in for those who are with us virtually. For anybody who's wishing to speak on ordinances on second reading, we will have those hearings at the appropriate time, and also will take those comments at the appropriate time. And then there will be a final call for anybody who did not get in on any of the other opportunities to speak at the end of the meeting. But we will not be taking virtual calls or calls for our virtual viewers at that time. Okay, let's see. Moving on. We're at the approval of minutes. Are there any motions or comments about the minutes? Alrighty. Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I received this survey, the rental licensing and inspection survey. I would like this to be posted on our website, our city website, because I do not think that very many people will be receiving it or be able to respond to it the way it's being distributed right now. It's a Survey Monkey thing, which is fine, but we could do that on our city website. So I would move that we post this rental licensing and inspection survey, which people only have 2 weeks to reply to on the city website, so that more people will be able to respond.
Thank you, Councilmember Christensen. I will take that motion in the next agenda item when we do agenda revisions and things. This is specifically about approval of minutes. So,
I'm sorry.
would you like to make a motion concerning the minutes from July 13th, 2021's?
Yes, I'm sorry. I would move that we approve the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All right, Councilmember Christensen has moved approval of the July 13th minutes with a second by Councilmember Hidalgo-Faring. Let us vote. Does everybody, I don't get it on my screen here, I guess.
It's on your site.
Yeah, sorry, new to this technology. We'll just go with, we don't seeing it, not seeing it.
Yeah, okay, you'll see the result there when I wrap it. Just want
Okay.
to make sure everybody voted.
Okay. It doesn't tell me if everybody's voted, right?
It doesn't.
Okay.
Oh, oops.
Okay, the motion passes 5-0 with Mayor Bagley absent and Councilmember Waters absent. Now we will move on to agenda revisions and submission of documents and motions to direct the city manager to add agenda items to future agendas. Councilmember Christensen, if you'd just like to make that motion again. And
Okay.
there you go.
Thank you. Because we have thousands of people in this city who rent, I would like them to have the opportunity to actually make some comment on this anonymously. And so I would suggest we put what is referred to in the communications business as a bug, a little visual notice that something is happening on our city page with a way to take the SurveyMonkey anonymous survey on rental licensings and inspections. Do I have a second?
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Christian has made a motion to include a survey, I believe is how I heard it. A link to a survey about, what was it, rental? Sorry.
Survey to see what people think. No,
There you go, sorry.
okay, sorry, we're all. Um, It's a survey that is being put out by the, this says the Community Services. And I know it's also being distributed to the Landlord Alliance. So there are thousands of people in this town who are renters, and I would like them to be able to take the survey, just to
Okay,
anonymously take a survey on their opinion of rental licensing and rental inspections.
okay, so I understand the motion to be pushing the survey out to the general
Right.
public.
Yeah.
If I can answer it, it's on the planning page, but they're gonna move it to the front page.
Okay.
Okay, that's good. That'll be fine.
So as such, I don't think we necessarily need a motion if.
Yeah, but they only have until the 15th or 13th of August, so,
Yeah, they'll just move it from one page to the other, so it's more.
okay.
Visible.
It needs to be more prominent, okay.
Okay, I've been asked to
Alright.
still take the vote. So, Councilmember Christensen would like the link to that survey more visibly and pushed out to the public. It was seconded by Councilmember Peck. Let us vote. The motion passes 5-0 with Mayor Bagley absent and Councilmember Waters absent. All right, let me, a second here, let's see, that's 8, okay. And Councilmember Peck. There you go.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm not sure if this is a motion, needs to be a motion, but I do have a question for staff. I hear that the night well is up and running, and if someone could tell me when that well is going to start fracking, I would be curious to know that. If you can't answer, oh, I see Dale has his finger up. The right finger.
Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Peck. Two things. The completion fracking of the well is scheduled to begin toward the end of this month, sometime after the 29th of July. Likely will take a couple of months. Staff is going to be in front of you reporting and giving you an update along with Dr. Helmig on oil and gas matters as well as air quality in August 3rd. And so we'll certainly be giving you an update, and we are continuing all of our monitoring and work
Okay,
throughout the duration of this effort.
perfect. Thank you, Dale.
All right, thank you very much. There are two items that I need to address real quickly. There were two ordinances that were inadvertently left off the agenda for tonight's meeting because they were published as per our charter requirement, but not properly noticed in accordance with open meetings law by not being on the agenda. These items will be open and continued to the August 10th meeting agenda. And so real quick, if there's anybody here wishing to speak on these items, I will open them up for public comment if you're here for them. So let me just read them off real quick. The first one is Ordinance 2021-37, a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 14.04, Sections 14.04.160 and 14.04.170 of the Longmont Municipal Code on system development fees to provide for the redevelopment of single-family homes to multi-family dwelling units. Is there anybody that is in attendance to speak on this item? Seeing none, we will move this to the August 10th, we'll continue this to the August 10th, 2021 regular session. The other ordinance is Ordinance 2021-38, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the City of Longmont to lease the real property known as Vance Brand Municipal Airport Hangar Parcel H21 to Richard A. Hall. Is there anybody who is in attendance tonight to speak on this item? Seeing none, this will also be continued to the August 10th, 2021 regular session. Seeing no other motions, we'll be moving on to item 6 of the agenda, the city manager's report. Harold?
No report, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, very good. Moving on to item 7, special reports and presentations. I do believe we have one. I like it.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez and council members. I'm David Bell, Natural Resource Director for the state of Longmont. It's been a long time since I've been up here, so good to see all of you. I'm here this evening just to do a quick introduction to Daniel Boulay, who is with the Colorado Lottery. He's the Public Relations Outreach Manager, and he's here to present the city with a Starburst Award. The Starburst Award is an award the state gives to those communities who spend lottery dollars in an exceptional way to create great community outdoor and recreational activities. And I also have the person here who created that great outdoor recreational opportunity, which is our Senior Park Manager, Kathy Crone. She'll be accepting the award on behalf of the city. I do know that Daniel and the lottery would love to have a chance to get a photo with council if they get a chance at the end of this, but I'm going to turn over to Daniel to do the award recognition, and then Kathy will accept that.
Thank you, David. And thank you, City Council, for having me today. My name is Daniel Bewley. I am the Public Outreach Manager for the Colorado Lottery, and I'm very excited to be here today to present this Starburst Award to the City of Longmont for your amazing work with the Garden Acres Park Renewal Project. The Colorado Lottery has been around for 38 years, and we've given back over $3.7 billion to fund parks, trails, open spaces, and schools all across Colorado. But the Starburst Awards really give us a chance to focus on those projects that really do go above and beyond in their use of lottery funds. And when I was reading Kathy's application for Garden Acres Park, it really did strike me, and it was one of those ones that had an impact on the community, and is what the lottery and what our funds go is all about. Before coming here tonight, I did have the pleasure of dropping by Garden Acres, and people were outside enjoying these wonderful softball fields that you guys renovated. They were playing kickball. I wanted to join in, but I didn't think I was appropriately dressed. But it is amazing just to see how this park is utilized by the community and what lottery dollars go towards. The lottery gave almost $2 million towards this project, and a lot of hard work went into it, and I'll let Kathy go into all the details of it, but we are so proud to be a partner with you guys and to help support such amazing causes. And so congratulations on behalf of the lottery, and I'll let Kathy take over and speak a little bit about the project.
Well, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, as you said, I'm Kathy Crone. I'm a Senior Project Manager with the City of Longmont Parks and Natural Resources Division, and I'm proud to accept the award on behalf of the city, and I'm proud to have been able to work on this project. It was a complicated and drawn-out project, starting with a master plan update for Garden Acres, and then several phases of infrastructure improvements, which took several years. But it's wonderful to have been able to see it through to completion and witness the positive benefits of this reinvestment in one of Longmont's most well-loved parks. I primarily want to thank some folks because it was such a team effort from city staff. So in no particular order, I want to thank a few folks. First, the Colorado Lottery for recognizing this project with the Starburst Award. The fact that the award recognizes excellence in the use of Conservation Trust dollars and not only views new park construction projects and natural resources projects as important, but also recognizes park renewal projects that improve aging and underserved neighborhoods is just fantastic. Next, I'd like to thank the Longmont City Council, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and the Longmont community for supporting reinvestments in our parks. Since 2014, when the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan was completed, we heard a resounding support from our community to not only build new parks and trails as our community grows, but also to take care of what we have. In order to do that, we needed a funding source. City Council approved the Park and Greenway maintenance fee, which is a $2 fee on our utility bills. This funding source, in combination with the Colorado Lottery dollars, makes projects like this possible. Last but not least, I need to mention the many city staff, consultants, and contractors who teamed up to see the project through. It was a major renovation of a very highly and well-loved sports complex. It was not feasible for recreation programming to shut down for a year and a half, so we developed a phasing plan that allowed the fields to remain in play while the complex was renovated. This required a ton of patience, communication, and teamwork. So if you'll bear with me, I just want to mention some of the folks who went the extra mile to keep the project going in the community and the user groups happy. Krishy Construction, now KCI, was the general contractor. They were extremely flexible with the city in keeping the complex open and users safe, and they always came to the table with creative solutions. BHA Landscape Architects and ALM2S Architecture was the consulting team. The project took 4 years from master planning to the construction completion, and they stuck with us through it all. From Recreation, Jeff Friesner, Ben Wagner, Chris Crone, Renee Kingsley, Terry Calvin, who's now retired, Jim Netzel, Tom Lockett, Jennifer Dieter, Angie Murray. Not only did they help guide the design and planning of the project, but they were also on the ground staff having to deal with the issues presented with having a sports complex in use while under construction. And they also continuously came up with creative ideas to improve the overall project. From Parks Operations, Charles Kamenides. He's now our sanitation manager, but at the time he was also the park superintendent. And he contributed both from parks and the sanitation standpoint. A lot of trash gets generated at these types of facilities. Also from Parks Operations, the on-the-ground folks, Jesse Ornalis, Matt Pillar, Blake Bianco, Gilbert Camarillo, Chris Davis, Zach Burson, Mike Van Meter. They were all on the ground contributing on a continual basis. And then additional city staff were from Senior Services, who helped keep our senior softball league playing ball. Bill McNeil with PWR Inspection Services. He was on site continuously throughout construction, and it was his second time. He helped with the construction the first time around, so he had a lot of historic knowledge. We had engineering staff helping, building inspection staff, police and fire, planning staff. I'm sure there's additional staff members who I haven't mentioned, so I apologize if I didn't specifically mention them, but I just wanted to give everyone a sense of the teamwork involved with just one project. Each and every member of the team contributed to receiving this award, and I appreciate the opportunity to thank all of them here tonight. So thank you. And thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else speaking, or?
I don't think so.
Nope.
Are we doing a photo?
It looks like we're doing a photo op.
It was your idea. There you go.
And I am gonna leave, with the lottery, we don't like to come empty-handed, so I'll leave some, small items, some gifts, for you guys, so, I do appreciate your hospitality. Those will be outside, plenty for everybody, so, anyone is welcome to take some, and I also brought some lottery tickets with me. I can't leave those, but I will, I'll disperse those appropriately, and I'll try not to be a distraction, but, we do appreciate, you guys having us here today, and, congratulations again.
Thank you so much. All right, it's that time in the meeting. We're moving on to item 8, which is first call public invited to be heard. I'm going to do it a little bit differently than Mayor Bagley does in the sense that you can go ahead and throw up the screen for people to try to get called in while we're having our in-person folks start. Just to remind everybody that you can speak on any topic that is not on the agenda or not in public hearing, as in the second readings of the ordinances. And that please share with us your name and address, as well as that it's a 3-minute time limit. All right, first person up is Mary Headley, and please correct me if I don't get your name correct.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I'm Mary Headley from 1615 Bowen Street in Longmont. I'm the first of 5 volunteers here tonight who represent the Longmont chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby, or CCL. With approval from the Sustainability Advisory Board, we are asking City Council to proclaim support for a federal carbon pricing policy, specifically H.R. 2307, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. Thank you for this opportunity to tell you why. First, a brief introduction to CCL, a nonprofit, nonpartisan grassroots advocacy organization that works to develop the political will to address climate change. CCL is made up of thousands of local volunteers who see the critical need for federal legislation on climate action. They appreciate CCL's consistently respectful approach that builds upon shared values rather than partisan divides. CCL has spent more than a decade carefully studying, refining, and building academic and bipartisan support for a coherent national policy to incentivize a rapid, orderly, and fair transition away from fossil fuels. CCL endorses H.R. 2307 as the best and most viable embodiment of this policy to date, and hope you will too. Longmont CCL is proud our city has been undertaking climate actions on multiple fronts, and many members of our chapter have a long history of working for these actions. In 2019, City Council declared a climate emergency, calling on the U.S. government to mobilize for action. This resulted in Longmont's Climate Action Task Force and a Just Transition Plan Committee. Their combined report builds upon the sustainability plan adopted in 2016 and the goal set in 2019 to use 100% renewable energy sources for electricity by 2030. This report gives recommendations for moving forward, and a review by staff and advisory boards help develop priorities to achieve these goals. So, with all this good work, why do we need federal legislation too? Sadly, it's because these efforts are not sufficient to solve our local climate-related problems, and certainly not our national and our global ones. We are reminded daily that we do not live in a bubble. Wildfires elsewhere darken our skies with soot. Drilling on the eastern plains further degrades our air quality. And warming temperatures around the world increase droughts and severe weather, giving rise to both aridification and floods that can permanently alter our landscape. Longmont CCL is devoting its efforts to build the political will for this crucial carbon pricing legislation and asks for your support in doing so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Virginia Black, please.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez and council members. It's really great to be with you all this evening, in person. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Virginia Black, and I live at 2609 Elmhurst Circle. Tonight's presentation to City Council comes at a critical time for climate action. Congress is considering a large infrastructure package that includes measures to address climate change, and Democrats are putting together a package for the reconciliation budget that includes other climate action measures. This is a window of opportunity for us to have impact in Washington. Why a carbon price? Carbon pricing addresses the root cause of climate change, our reliance on fossil fuels. The resultant increase in greenhouse gas emissions that blanket the Earth creates elevated temperature and heat domes that we're currently experiencing. It is the quickest and most cost-effective way of decreasing our greenhouse gas emissions. How does it work? A price is put on carbon at the source of production or import. The fee rises each year until targets are met. This creates incentives to move away from fossil fuels to renewable energy and sparks innovation to meet the challenge. The steady known increase allows businesses and individuals to plan, and border adjustments will assure that our businesses remain competitive. In a carbon fee and dividend policy, such as that prescribed by the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, the fee is returned to Americans on an equal basis, 1 share per adult, half a share per child. This helps mitigate increased costs that may be passed on to consumers. There are 5 key reasons why it is essential for the U.S. to include such a carbon fee and dividend policy in its strategy to address climate change. I'm going to go over the first 2, and Mike Clinton, our next speaker, will go over the last 3. First, it puts us on track to net zero in 2050. The policy sets a price that starts at $15 a ton of CO2 and increases $10 a ton annually. Resources for the Future calculates that by 2030, this policy will reduce U.S. emissions more than 50% before the 2005 levels, which is in line with President Biden's Earth Day commitment. Second, it's a fast, effective policy across the whole economy. A clean energy standard, which is being discussed, would reduce emissions from power plants, but that accounts for only 25% of greenhouse gas emissions. An economy-wide price on carbon, however, reaches into every sector. It's also quick to set up, leading to meaningful impact in a matter of months. Now I'll pass the mic to Mike. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mike Clinton, you're next.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez, council members, I'm really happy to be able to present to you today. My name is Mike Clinton. I live at 1875 Ute Creek Drive, and I'm going to be presenting reasons 3, 4, and 5 for why carbon pricing is a good idea. And aren't you glad we didn't use the 50 reason version? Okay. Number 3, it will save lives. Air pollution from fossil fuels and its impact on our health is worse than we thought. New research shows that premature deaths in America each year due to air pollution are nearly twice as high as previously understood. As many as 1 in 10 American deaths today are caused by air pollution. A carbon price will save 4.5 million American lives over the next 50 years by restoring clean air across the country. Air quality responds quickly when we stop burning fossil fuels. Because the carbon price has a quick impact, the effect of carbon pricing may be seen as soon as 9 months after the start date. It will start saving up to 90,000 American lives each year very quickly. It will have particular impact in communities of color, which have suffered, among many other things, the worst health impacts of burning fossil fuels. Reason number 4, it puts money in your pocket. A carbon tax becomes affordable for ordinary Americans when the money collected from fossil fuel companies is given as a dividend or carbon cashback payment to every American to spend with no restrictions. This protects low and middle income Americans who otherwise might not be able to afford the transition. Studies show that the monthly carbon cashback payments are enough to essentially cover increased costs for 85% of American households, and 95% of the least wealthy low and middle income households will break even to come out ahead. It is essentially revenue neutral for both the government and for Americans. And reason number 5, we're under pressure from other countries that are already pricing carbon. The European Union announced recently that they're going to impose a carbon price tax, carbon border tax, beginning in 2023 on imports from nations that do not have an equivalent carbon price. When this goes into effect, American exporters will be subject to the European carbon tax, placing them at a competitive disadvantage. However, if the U.S. implements its own carbon price and carbon border adjustment, the policy can keep American businesses competitive and motivate more nations to price carbon themselves. Carbon pricing and border adjustments need to go hand in hand, as in the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. There is currently discussion of putting a carbon border adjustment in the plan for the reconciliation budget. However, the World Trade Organization has said that a companion price on carbon would be required. Next, Lyle is going to talk about the benefits of carbon pricing to our city of Longmont.
Thank you very much. Lyle Ruppert.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez and council members. My name is Lyle Rupert from 2142 Spencer Street, Longmont.
Real quick, could you just adjust the microphone closer to you? There you go. Thank you.
A national carbon pricing policy benefits Longmont. Clean power for Longmont will not in itself slow nearby oil and gas exploration for sale to other markets. An escalating fee on carbon will. Ending local extraction will make our air healthier.
I'm gonna move this over even a little
Sure.
more to make sure you're heard. There you go, try that.
All right. Ending local extraction will make our air healthier, and measured, predictable ramp in fees will ease the transition of our neighbors whose jobs now depend on extraction. Longmont needs rapid electrification of appliances and transport. An incentives-only approach can be slow and costly, and mandates by isolated communities will not bring affordable options to market rapidly. A nationwide escalating fee on carbon, with cash return to decision-making consumers, will do the trick. Initiatives, such as building efficiency measures and use of smart meters, can be costly for early adopters. This policy transfers net cash from those who are slow to decarbonize to those in the lead. With our mix of renewables, a Longmont home using 800 kilowatt hours per month could expect dividends to outpace fees by perhaps $3 a month, with greater gain for more fully electrified households. Electric vehicle production and adoption will grow more rapidly, reducing pollution and ozone levels. It will help our businesses. Local mandates, however carefully designed, can raise costs and make local goods less competitive. Longmont cannot implement border adjustments at the city's edge. The policy we support will level the field nationally and internationally. Locally made goods with low carbon content will have a price advantage here and at large. And the measured, predictable increase in fees will allow businesses to optimize the timing of their decarbonization investments. Longmont's sustainability and just transition plans rightly focus on those of modest means. Analyses show that less wealthy households across the U.S., including those in Colorado's Districts 2 and 4, will receive more than their increased costs, ensuring that all can afford the transition. The policy encompasses all fossil fuels extracted anywhere in the world. Complete success in attaining Longmont's 2030 goals will still leave residents funding carbon pollution every time they buy goods made abroad, board an airplane, or pave their driveway. We need parallel efforts on all fronts. The cost of inaction is unfathomable and time is short. Longmont's enlightened policies cannot shield its citizens from the disruptions and calamities that follow from a meek and uncoordinated national response to this pressing need. However, federal carbon pricing will leave us healthier and prosperous. Thank you for supporting intelligent policies to meet this emergency.
Thank you very much. Adam Reed.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. My name is Adam Reed, and I'm the last CCL volunteer to speak tonight. My address is 3526 Feather Reed Avenue. I'm here to highlight the growing support for carbon pricing. This support includes scientists and economists, as well as businesses and government leaders at the local, state, and federal levels. Here are 6 highlights. First, leading science-based organizations have formed a consensus that we need to price carbon. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, explicit carbon prices remain a necessary condition of ambitious climate policies. Here in the U.S., the National Academy of Sciences says pricing carbon will create an economic incentive to reduce carbon emissions and unlock innovation in every corner of the energy economy. Economists from across the political spectrum have independently studied and endorsed carbon pricing. In 2019, Columbia University's Center on Global Energy Policy released a report saying economists almost universally support putting a price on carbon because it is a uniquely cost-effective policy tool. That same year, several prominent economists made history by recommending a carbon fee and dividend policy in a joint statement published in the Wall Street Journal. The list of signatories includes Janet Yellen, the current U.S. Secretary of Treasury, as well as 4,000 other economists. Apart from economists, business leaders are calling for action. Businesses recognize that market-based solutions like carbon pricing provide a transparent, fair, and measured approach to reaching a net zero economy. Support is growing across America. For example, the Business Roundtable supports carbon pricing, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce says it supports a market-based approach to accelerate greenhouse gas emissions reductions across the U.S. economy. Lastly, support is emerging at the local level. In 2019, the U.S. Conference of Mayors passed a resolution in support of carbon pricing. They even urged the U.S. Congress to pass legislation that imposes a price on carbon emissions. Additionally, over 250 local governments, including 7 here in Colorado, have called for a price on carbon. We hope that the city of Longmont will join them. We need federal legislation that will level the playing field at home and drive international efforts as well. Your endorsement of a carbon fee and dividend policy, such as H.R. 2307, will help boost the political will to put carbon pricing into national legislation. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Ingrid Moore.
I'm Ingrid Moore. I live at 925 Little Leaf Court, Longmont. Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez and council members, thank you for allowing me this venue to talk tonight. I came here tonight to make sure that the people here in this chamber and also those watching at home are aware of the upcoming public meetings being held by the Colorado Independent Congressional and Legislative Redistricting Commissions. I'm not connected to these at all, but just think it's important that community members know about them and to show up at these meetings and have their voices heard. In a few minutes, I'll be giving you some important information here, so grab a paper and pencil to write it down. The purpose of these commissions is to draw Colorado's new congressional and state legislative district maps based on census data gathered in 2020. How do I tell the time? Okay.
You have a little bit over 2 minutes left.
Yeah. I want to stress that we should all have an interest in this process because it's going to determine how we're going to be represented for the next 10 years. Redistricting is simply about fair representation for the people who live within them. And because the census data has been delayed, they're under a rushed deadline to get these maps completed. Your input will be more important than ever to help them do this. They're wanting to hear from, quote, communities of interest. Be thinking about what community of interest you are part of. Does your neighborhood have concerns about nearby fracking, traffic, a development project coming up? Do you want this community of interest to be split between 2 congressional districts? Whatever your interests are, the commissioners need to hear from you. Here are the dates and locations of the public meetings. Longmont is on August 10th, 7 p.m. at the Isaac Walton Clubhouse. August 10th, 7 p.m., Isaac Walton. Boulder is August 11th at 7 p.m. at CSU. You can look at the preliminary maps that have been proposed at redistricting.colorado.gov. redistricting.colorado.gov. If you want to learn more about redistricting, how it works, and why it has such a big impact on our democracy, the Longmont Area Democrats will be hosting a presentation by Common Cause Colorado about the redistricting process on August 4th at 6:30 via Zoom. You can find out more by emailing us at longmontareadems@gmail.com. LAD is all about encouraging engagement in our democracy, with education being an essential part of that. We hope you get involved. Remember, democracy is not a spectator sport. Thank you.
Oh, perfect timing. Thank you. Strider Benston.
Greetings and thank you. Strider Benston, 951 West 17th. I've mentioned the last several weeks about how the former guy and the parallels to how Adolf Hitler took over Germany in the 20s and 30s, and also how the Ku Klux Klan took over the South and ruled basically from 1890 to 1965 by destroying democracy. One of the ways they did it, aside from racism, was to freeze up the government to where it would not do anything, especially anything like the climate catastrophe we're facing right now. That's part of the strategy. People say democracy doesn't work. Let's worship a dictator like the former guy who lost by 7 million votes and claims that he's still the president. Actually, he tweeted one word out on January the 5th. He meant to say overthrow, but somebody told him, well, that's treason. You can't say that. So he tweeted out one word, overturn. And then we had the insurrection. I came to talk about Bob Moses. Some of you know we lost Bob Moses 2 days ago. He was the first organizer for SNCC in 1960. He grew up in a housing project in Bronx. His father was a janitor. He graduated with a master's in mathematical philosophy from Harvard in '57 and was teaching in Brooklyn. And he learned about the sit-ins and went down to Atlanta to see what he could do to help. Ella Baker was running the office, and she said, well, there's nothing to do here. Go down to Mississippi and I'll give you my contacts. And Bob went down there to Macomb, Mississippi and began the civil rights movement. He met Amzie Moore and people that Miss Baker had organized back in 1941 by herself. And there's a movie called Freedom Song. Danny Glover stars in it that's about Bob's work in Macomb in 1960. And I last saw Bob Moses at Vincent Harding's funeral here in Denver a few years ago. Well, I saw him again in Raleigh. Bob, SNCC didn't put up big leader heroes. We organized local people to run their own government. And Bob saw that he was being made into a hero by his name, Moses. So he changed his name to his mother's name and went to Africa for 12 years and came back and taught algebra. So thank you. Honor to Bob Moses.
Thank you very much. Betty Nunnally.
My name is Reverend Betty Brown Nunnally. I live at 1013 Box Elder Circle. And I came to address the council and, well, the people of Longmont, and to thank you for Juneteenth picnic, legacy picnic. I was part of the group that put it on in Longmont, and it was called the first annual because we're planning to have another one and others, and we also plan to have other events. And I want to thank those who volunteered to assist, those who came in person and assisted, those who donated money, and some of you still owe us money because you reserved and did not show up. And we will also be accepting that. We want to thank people who even thought of coming and were not able to come, and thank those who prayed for us and thought of us. And like I said before, we called it the first annual Legacy Picnic because we're planning to have other events. Right now, we're talking about having a Martin Luther King Day March. We had one last year, I think it was, Marade, a Martin Luther King Day Marade. We're talking to people in Boulder about, and maybe even all Erie and Boulder County about having some kind of a meeting place or something, but we're working on that right now, and we're working on other events. I just wanted to say a little bit about Juneteenth. It was written up as the freedom of the slaves, but slaves were not freed at that time. And I grew up in Texas, and we did celebrate Juneteenth a little bit. And there's a lot of information about Juneteenth, and I recommend that you find it. And if you can't find it, I can help you find it so that you can learn about the different holidays that we celebrate here and should be celebrating here in the United States. Thank you for your time. Oh, and before I leave, I just wanted to say I've been riding the bus. I rode the bus here today, and they give you this nice mask, and I think it's classy because they usually have those paper things in other places where I go. So I just want to thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That was our last in-person speaker on the list for the first call. We will have a final call invited to be heard for anybody that didn't get the opportunity to speak. Do we have any callers? We have two. Two callers, okay. We can take those now if possible. If you're ready. Ready.
We may get feedback.
Okay, I am now unmuted. Thank you. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm away from my TV set, so I'm good. Yes, yes, my name is Clark Allen. I live in the Greens. Okay, thank you. The reason I'm calling is last week I read an article and saw a headline in the Times Call that really set me back. It basically stated ozone soars to 48% above federal limits. Based on that, I thought I should take a step back and take a look at myself and see how I'm doing in relation to helping out our environment. And basically, I have put in all low flow toilets. I have zero-scape my landscape. I have what little lawn I have, I mow with a non-powered lawnmower, just a push lawnmower. I spend hours weeding and not using any herbicides in my gardens and throughout all of the stones that I have. And basically, I do not drive between the hours 11 and 4 when the ozone is really high based on the recommendations for this area. So then I thought I should take a step back and take a look at the community that is around me. And so I first started and noticed that there's not a single gardener that I have seen within my general area and the areas that I ride my bicycle in that use anything but gas-powered lawnmowers and blowers, and they go all day up until the last minute in which they can run. So they run during the high time in which they should not be running for their ozone. I then noticed that between the hours of 11 and 3, which is about a 4-hour period, it's not unusual to see 40 to 50 planes constantly circling the airport at Van Sprant. And I actually looked up the EPA information on that, and that basically translates into 19,800 pounds of CO2 for that 4-hour period. The one single plane that I could look up for the skydiving services out there produces approximately 7,500 pounds of carbon for that same period. And here again, this is at the height of the ozone when we should not be doing this. The next thing that I actually took a look at my hybrid car. And basically my hybrid car, if I drove it for that 4-hour period, would produce 160 pounds of CO2, which is dramatically different and far less than that. I also then noticed that every piece of equipment that I could determine that runs on the golf courses and mows the golf courses all day long also is powered. It doesn't appear to be electric. It appears, if it's natural gas, I would be surprised because there aren't no bottles on it. But I think you should look at this. So basically, based on what I've done, I think I have a pretty good scorecard, but I don't know why I even bother anymore. Because the simple fact is
Sir,
that
that's
I
3
could go
minutes.
do all of these other things the other way, and I
Hi, this is Ruby Bowman, area code, not area code, but 1512 Left Hand Drive. The proposed, this is Ruby Bowman, 1512 Left Hand Drive. Can I go? Thank you. The proposed fee of $18,528 for cash in lieu of water rights dedication is too low. Staff says this low rate is competitive, but it's really a giveaway to developers. I know this is true because I read a report that said Longmont has the lowest cost for developers for water tap fees, sewer tap fees, and raw water dedication among peer cities. Dacono and Frederick have some of the highest. If developers had been paying the actual market value of acquiring water, Longmont residents wouldn't have had to shoulder the financial burden of paying high water rate increases that go towards paying city water supply projects. Longmont water rate payers are subsidizing developers and their developments. This needs to end. Yesterday, the Lafayette City Council had a workshop to discuss increasing their cash in lieu of water rights dedication fee from $18,900 per acre foot to $87,500 per acre foot. This $87,500 number is based on the cost of of acquiring an acre-foot from the CBT project. The reason Lafayette is considering an increase of the current cash in lieu of $18,900, which by the way is more than the proposed Longmont fee increase, is that Lafayette doesn't want their water ratepayers to subsidize developers and their development. This was stated by Lafayette city staff at the meeting. A city survey of cities, water districts, and their cash in lieu fees revealed the average fee was $41,830, which is $23,300 more than Longmont's proposed cash in lieu fee increase. Staff failed to provide specific fee information for each city or water district that was surveyed, nor was fee information provided for Boulder County cities. The proposed cash in lieu fee of $18,528 guarantees Longmont water ratepayers like you and me and low-income houses will continue to subsidize rich developers. Please direct staff to go back to the drawing board and maybe have a reputable consultant do it and come up with a cash in lieu of water rights dedication fee that reflects the true cost of acquiring water. Direct them to bring it back as soon as possible before annexations line up to be approved. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That concludes first call, public invited to be heard. Oh. I believe we had turned up the volume for the callers to be heard, just as a quick explanation. As such, we'll move on to item 9 of the agenda, consent agenda and introduction and reading by title of first reading ordinances. Dawn, could you please read the items on consent into the record, please?
Absolutely. Item 9A is Resolution 2021-77, a resolution of the Longmont City Council establishing the fee for cash in lieu of water rights transfers. 9B is Resolution 2021-78, a resolution of the Longmont City Council to approve the Colorado Communities for Climate Action 2021 policy statement. 9C is Resolution 2021-79, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the First Amendment to Customer Information System Updated Intergovernmental Agreement between City of Fort Collins, City of Longmont, and Platte River Power Authority. 9D are the collective bargaining contracts with the Fraternal Order of Police and the National Association of Firefighters for 2022 to 2024. Resolution 2021-80, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving a cooperative agreement between the city and the Longmont Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 6 for January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024. Resolution 2021-81, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving a cooperative agreement between the city and the Longmont Professional Firefighters Association, International Association of Firefighters Local 1806 for January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024. 9E is Resolution 2021-82, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the Colorado Department of Transportation for grant funding for law enforcement assistance impaired driving enforcement funds for July 2021 to June 2022. 9F is Resolution 2021-83, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between the city and Boulder County Housing and Human Services for parent education services. 9G is Resolution 2021-84, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving 2 intergovernmental agreements and a lease between the City of Longmont and the St. Vrain Valley School District RE1J for city assistance in expanding internet access for students. 9H is Resolution 2021-85, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the St. Vrain Valley School District RE1J for joint use of facilities. And 9I is approved grant application to the History Colorado State Historical Fund for restoration and preservation projects at the Callahan House.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I would like to poll for comments and one for an amendment, A, B, and F.
All right, thank you. Okay, Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd like to move the consent agenda minus A, B, and F.
Second?
All right, thank you very much. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda minus A, B, and F by Councilmember Peck, seconded by Councilmember Martin. Can we please vote? Yeah. All right, the motion passes 5-0 with Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Waters absent. Thank you very much. We will now move on to ordinances on second reading and public hearings on any matter. So item 10A, the Irwin Thomas Comprehensive Plan Land Use Amendment, Rezoning and Concept Plan Amendment, continued from the July 13th, 2021 meeting, has 3 ordinances associated with it. The first ordinance is Ordinance 2021-33, a bill for an ordinance approving the land use amendment to the envisioned Longmont Comprehensive Plan for Irwin Thomas, generally located south of Highway 119 and east of Martin Street. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none at this time, we will now open the public hearing on Ordinance O 2021-33. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing. At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion from any council members if there's not anything else associated with this for questions or any staff presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I'm Brian Schumacher with City Planning staff. Just wanted to make a few brief remarks this evening regarding this proposal, just to provide the council just with a brief overview. As noted by Mayor Pro Tem, this item was continued from July 13th. Just wanted to mention that notice has been provided per the municipal code for this hearing this evening. Also, just wanted to mention that throughout the process that started late last fall, early winter, that notice has been provided 5 times to surrounding property owners within 1,000 feet, plus the entire Harvest Junction residential subdivision to provide adequate notice for this proposal. So that included approximately 650 mailings with each notice that was provided, starting with the neighborhood meeting through this hearing tonight. So the applications for council's consideration include a comprehensive plan land use amendment, rezoning and concept plan amendment for the Irwin Thomas property that's located both north and south of Highway 119, east of Martin Street and west of 119th Street. So the primary land use changes that are proposed with this request include replacing the mixed-use employment land use with mixed-use regional and mixed-use corridor land uses. And that's intended to accommodate the proposed Costco warehouse and additional commercial and mixed-use development. Just wanted to mention that shifting the mixed-use employment area to accommodate mixed-use regional center and mixed-use corridor will continue to offer a diverse range of employment opportunities, but will increase commercial and retail options in that area. A few other changes that are proposed with this request include adding multifamily neighborhood use, land use to diversify the mix of affordable housing options, adding a collector street that's proposed as part of the Harvest Junction Junction proposal, the Irwin Thomas project, and that includes the Harvest Moon Drive, and that's the collector street between the signalized intersection proposed at Highway 119 and Quail Road on the south. So the proposed changes will increase the setback and provide additional mitigation of potential impacts between the existing residential development to the west and the planned and approved gravel mining on the remainder of the property. The proposed zoning changes with this application are to rezone approximately 70 acres of the existing PUD zoning that's on the property. The development and the rezoning coincide with the area that's planned to be subdivided for the proposed Costco development and the parcel that the city is acquiring for affordable housing. The balance of the property will retain the PUD zoning to be consistent with the approved gravel mining plan. After the mining and reclamation have been completed, the property owner could request rezoning of that balance of the property to be consistent with the comprehensive plan that's in effect at that time. These applications are intended to facilitate a public-private partnership to bring commercial development, new jobs, and additional location for affordable housing for the city. The landowners in the city will partner to invest in the infrastructure required to serve the proposed development. Back in December of 2020, City Council approved a public-private partnership agreement with the property owners and Costco Warehouse Wholesale Corporation related to development of a Costco membership warehouse facility, affordable housing, and additional commercial and retail uses. So this item was reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission in May, and the commission voted unanimously 7-0 to recommend approval of the comprehensive plan land use amendment, rezoning, and concept plan amendment. As part of that application, there was also a preliminary subdivision plat that the Planning and Zoning Commission approved, subject to approval, council's approval of the rezoning, comprehensive plan amendment, and concept plan amendment as well this evening. So the applicant and consultants are here this evening. They aren't planning any formal presentation, but they're available for questions. That concludes my remarks. I'm happy to respond to any questions the council may have, and thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? Councilmember Christensen?
I don't have any questions, but I wanted to review this because I was on council when we originally discussed, this was around the time of the flood, using this property as gravel mining, which I really did not want to do, but I was persuaded by Mr. Rademacher that we needed that gravel in order to do mitigation to for the flood, and that made sense to me. And so I voted for that. However, and then the idea was that this would be restored after the gravel mining was done. And that made sense to me. There are many people, I realize that there are many people in the Harvest Junction neighborhood who are not happy about this. And I just want to reassure them that we actually do read what they write and we do think about it and we are concerned about it. But we have been discussing this for a very long time now, for many years. And to me, this is a higher and better use of this for the entire community. Bringing Costco here will bring us a lot of good-paying jobs. They pay far more than the competition and treat their employees better, from what I have read. And there will also be mixed use, so we'll bring decent jobs and also additional shopping for the citizens of Longmont. In addition to which, there will be the opportunity for 2 housing developments there that will be compatible with the housing to the south, and that will add greatly to our city, I think. There will be some for sale affordable housing. There will also be additional housing. So, in other words, I realize that people in that neighborhood have expressed that they are unhappy with this idea. But we on this, in this body have looked at this for several years, and there are a lot of people involved. The people are operating with goodwill, and we want the best for this community, and this provides many different benefits to this community. So I am voting for this, and I'm totally in support of this. I profoundly hope that it will be what everyone says, but I really do think that this will be a great addition to our community, and so I'm offering my support for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion? Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, I move adoption of O 2021-33.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Martin moved approval of ordinance 2021-33 with a second by Councilmember Hidalgo Faring. Let us have a vote. All right, the motion passes 5-0 with Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Waters absent. Moving on. Ordinance 2021-34, a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the Irwin Thomas first filing rezoning from PUD, Planned Unit Development, to MU-R Mixed Use Regional Center, R-MF Residential Multifamily, R-MN Residential Mixed Neighborhood, generally located south of Highway 119 and east of Martin Street. Is there a staff report for this one? No. Are there any questions from council? I see none at this time. So we will open the public hearing on ordinance O 2021-34. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this specific item? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing. Are there any questions or discussion from council? Councilmember Peck.
I would like to move ordinance 2021-34.
Second.
All righty. We have a motion from Councilmember Peck to pass ordinance 2021-34 with a second by, I think, Councilmember Martin. Can we have a vote, please? The motion passes 5-0 with Mayor Bagley absent and Councilmember Waters absent. The next item is ordinance 2021-35, a bill for an ordinance approving the Irwin Thomas Annexation Number 1 Concept Plan Amendment, generally located north and south of Highway 119, east of Martin Street and west of 119th Street. Is there any staff report for this item? No. Are there any questions from council at this time? Seeing none, I will now open the public hearing on ordinance O 2021-35. Are there anybody in the public or in the audience that would like to speak on this particular item? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing. Could I get a motion, please? All right. Councilmember Hidalgo Faring.
Yep, I'll move ordinance 2021-35. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Hidalgo Faring to pass ordinance 2021-35, seconded by Councilmember Peck this time. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we have a vote, please? All right, the motion passes 5-0 with Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Waters absent. That concludes our ordinances on second reading and public hearings on any matter. If it's all right with everybody, we'll take a 5-minute break and resume at 8:21. All right, it's been about 8 minutes. If we can start moving back towards our seats, please.
Yes, yeah.
Marcia's in the lobby still. Getting there. I know. The drawers were nice.
Drawers would be nice.
All right, it looks like that we've all made it back to our seats. We'll resume our meeting with item 11, items removed from the consent agenda. Councilmember Christensen, I believe we'll just start with A, unless you wanted a particular order.
No, A's fine.
All righty.
Okay, so this is the one I would like to amend. I agree with the caller on the phone, even though I had a hard time understanding her. I think I know what she was mainly saying. When I look at this, this has to do with the fee for cash in lieu of water rights transfers. And it's stated in here that we have the lowest, by far, the lowest rate of anyone around. The other lowest rate is 27,000. Ours is moving up to 18,528 per acre foot. I don't think that's enough. And I think we can still be competitive if we raise it to, and it says in the communication that that was determined by looking at the Windy Gap Firming Project, 18,528 per acre foot. I think we could still be competitive and do a little bit better and be a little more in the ballpark if we put it to up to the Union Enlargement and Pump Back Pipeline at 21,038 or 39 per acre foot, which is pretty close to the Button Rock enlargement of 21,829 feet. But so it's mid-range. It's a little bit more, but that strikes me as a little bit more fair. So I would move that we pass this resolution with the amendment of by bumping it up to, instead of 18,528 acre feet, 21,039 acre feet. Or $21,039 per acre foot. Do I have a second?
I'll second it because I want to hear the discussion and I think
Okay.
the Senate allows.
Okay, there's been a motion to increase the fee in lieu for water from 18,528, I think it was, to $21,039 per acre feet. Seconded by, or motion by Councilmember Christensen, seconded by Councilmember Hidalgo Faring. Would you like, before council has discussion, would you like to say anything, Dale? No.
Mayor Pro Tem, whatever works best for the council. I'm just here to speak a little bit more to, I suppose, why all cities are not the same.
Sure.
And why we're calculating the fee the way we are, if that's helpful.
Yes, I'm sure that there will be other comments when we get to council discussion that will also clarify things, because I believe Councilmember Martin is on the water, or is our liaison for the water board. But yes, please go ahead, Dale.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Christensen. First of all, thank you for pulling it. We rarely have the chance to talk to you about cash in lieu. And, really Longmont's been doing this now since 1963, since they formed the water board here in Longmont. And our community has been blessed. We've been very fortunate certainly in our water supply. And as I've told the city manager, anytime he asks, I don't want to trade with anybody. I don't want to trade with any other city around me or up and down the Front Range. And so how do we set a fee that appears to be on its face so much lower than what other communities are charging? First of all, it's because we have built our water supply over decades. Many of the cities that you're looking at, including Lafayette, are still in that process of trying to build a water supply. And whoever's late to the game on building a water supply in the state of Colorado is going to pay dearly. And again, thankfully, Longmont leaders, this council and your predecessors did a great job of securing for this community a very resounding and strong and resilient supply of water. So that all being said, we still need to charge what it costs to bring online the next increment of supply for our community. What the community has decided, both through the bond election, which, we sold the bonds today, as well as, this council, to invest in the Windy Gap Firming Project. That is the next increment of water supply coming into our community. It is the best way to provide a metric on what it is costing to bring water in. Ruby always makes very good points. She very often changes my mind on everything from wildlife protection to setbacks and everything else. In this case, I do disagree, though, in the sense that I don't believe that Longmont ratepayers are subsidizing by virtue of the fact that we also pay the lowest rates for water. Now, if we had high water rates, I'd be saying, you're right, Ruby, doggone it. We're doing it wrong. But I think on its whole, it's a rate that I believe is appropriate. It's one that also balances with the other community interests that the council has. Everything from affordable housing to just the price of bringing on, whether it's new commercial development or whatever we're doing. Not a handout. Paying full fare. And that's why we assess it. That's why your water board looks at it quarterly and provides their recommendation to the council. So, if there's detailed questions on how the numbers are crunched and those kinds of things, we can do that. But philosophically, that's sort of how we've always approached it.
Thank you. Did you just want to follow up with something, Councilmember Christensen? Sorry. Just ring back
yes. She
in.
wanted
Ring back in. I accidentally. These buttons are really close together. A fat-fingered one.
Oh, okay. Yes, Councilwoman Martin has something to ask. So I did want to ask you, it just seems to me that my water rates certainly have skyrocketed, and I'm not using any more, but I just don't want to undervalue things for the future. I want us to be, this is raising it just a modest amount more, so that in the future we don't have to keep coming back to people and saying, we need some more money, we need some more money. I appreciate, I know that the water board works hard and evaluates things, and they certainly know a lot more than I do. But I do think that I look at the rates of 1964, $100 for an acre foot. Oh, my God, and now we're at
It's too bad we didn't buy more yet, right?
Yeah, I know. Well, that's life. But I think that I'm just thinking it would be prudent to raise it a modest amount to provide for the future, a little bit more than what we have. And I know that the water board raised it by, $1,000 or something. I think raising it by 3,000 might be a little more prudent, but, that's just what it seems to me from looking, assessing, and looking at what other places are charging.
All right, Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I actually had the same thought this afternoon when I was reading the packet, that, gee, I didn't realize that we were that much lower than surrounding areas. And I was in the water board meeting when this was discussed. And what it seems to me that the water board was doing was not making a policy change at all in terms of how we manage our water rights. They were just making an adjustment based on the rate changes or the cost changes for Windy Gap. So in other words, their recommendation is really a recommendation to leave things as they are. Now, Longmont has had an increasing population simultaneously for a number of years with a decreasing water consumption, and not just per capita water. Total. Yeah. So, which is the reason that while I think that any prudent city in the chaotic situation we are now with the weather and with climate change should be preparing to be able to curtail our consumption or try to keep our consumption dropping down, because we anticipate, we have no idea what the water supply is going to do. But we're successfully doing that. The thing is, if you ask Ms. Bowman, for example, if you could put water back in the Colorado River, she'd do it in a second, And the reason, and so would I, actually. We all would, but with the way Colorado water law works, we can't. So, we have the permission to store more water in the Chimney Hollow Reservoir, and that's it. We're probably not going to get more permissions like that. We certainly aren't going to get any more diversions like the Windy Gap diversion.
Be very difficult.
Yes. So it seems to me that there's a piece of information missing in all of this, which is, what are those really high cash in lieu fees in other townships doing? Right? I mean, we have developers doing things, willingly pay our cash in lieu.
And if I may, Councilmember Martin.
Yes.
To respond to that question, what's the difference? One key difference, especially with our neighbors to the east, is that they rely almost solely on Colorado Big Thompson for their supply, which I do not believe is a sustainable or a prudent thing to do. Longmont, on the other hand, we take and utilize all of the historic water that has been in this valley, in this city, and we use it. We bring it into our systems. We bring it into the pipes and take it to people's homes. That's why our raw water policies and subsequent costs reflect that. If we weren't doing that, you bet it would be a much different ballgame. And again, it's based. Our city policies are different between the different cities, And Longmont is also very lucky. We happen to also be sitting in the St. Vrain Valley where some of the most senior water rights were appropriated. Guys, that just doesn't, others are envious of that.
Yes.
They would love to have that. And so again, our staff, we are trying to simply balance everything, be very transparent on how we're trying to set these costs and fees. I told Harold, I'll never turn down getting more money, but to say that, I've also got to have sort of my own sort of integrity of what we're bringing forward, how we're calculating it, how we can substantiate what we're doing.
Yes, and I understand that. So what I'm trying to do is frame this decision as whether a policy change that makes our fees in lieu more expensive is needed, whether there's a downside to it at all. Because again, I don't think we would be flying in the face of the Water Board by making this change, simply because their intention was not to introduce a policy change. And there is no real upside need for the policy change. We aren't losing opportunities, I don't believe, because of our current fee in lieu levels.
Cost structure, right.
So I am saying I don't actually know. I thought Mr. Hewson was sitting right back there, and he appears. Oh, there you are. You came down.
He's closer to me. He's to back me up
Yeah.
if I get this wrong.
So I'd like to just do a little quizzing, and the first thing to find out is whether other areas are getting those high fees in lieu, and whether you feel that it would be a disadvantage for us to raise ours a little bit because because we can.
Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Martin, the other communities are getting that. It does make development more difficult in those communities. It certainly makes affordable housing more difficult in those areas. Yes, we would still be competitive. Fort Collins has a fairly low rate for the core part of Fort Collins. But most of Fort Collins water is not done by Fort Collins, it's done by rural domestics, which is kind of an odd thing. Most people don't know about Fort Collins. Most of the growth in Fort Collins is in the rural domestics, which is charging the 70 to 80,000 for CBT, because those rural domestics are all on CBT out of Horsetooth. So, yeah, we would still be competitive. It would probably reduce our cash in lieu income because it would drive most of our developers to try to go out and buy orphaned agricultural shares are. A little bit of Lake McIntosh, a little bit of Union, and a few other shares in our water policy. Because of our low price, it was just far easier for development community to just come in with a check. If we go that high, we probably see more actual non-historical water come in. So it actually would reduce the income, but that's fine because we want the water ultimately is what the whole policy is.
We'd rather have the water.
Yeah, we would be fine there.
I think you hit on a central point, which is, Longmont's most critical immediate need is to add to our inventory of affordable housing. So is this going to be a deterrent to that? And I don't care who answers the question, but if it's a deterrent, I'm going to vote no. If not, I might vote yes.
So that's actually what we were talking about. And so I think it depends on the nature of the project and how many acres and what that total comes up to be and what that financial impact is going to look like. Because in that case, what we have in play via policies that council have created is that we can offset the water cost via the water fund. So in that situation, it's sort of a double hit because you have the cost. If we wanted to offset it for affordable housing, then you offset it via the water fund. And so the water fund's actually paying that money back in via the 1,500 acre feet, what was it? What's
Water
it?
acquisition
Fund, but
the dollars are coming from, and it's the allotment that we have in. It's the amount of water that we have identified in the raw water master plan, that the council has some discretion on how you want to utilize that water, really, for affordable housing or other community needs. You know, for the basic conversation, it is our job to review and advise and analyze things. If council wants us to do more work on that, in other words, you're not comfortable with the amount, more than happy to do that. If you want to set another number, that's okay too, you know. But I would like to just have a little bit of a chance to analyze some of these other potential implications that may happen, just so that we don't get surprised by something and go, oh, didn't. It's hard to think of everything on my feet as we're here tonight. But again, that's our job. If you want us to analyze it further, I'd want to talk with our colleagues around the city to make sure that we're not missing something as we're looking at it, and give you that whole picture. And that would also be awesome too, so.
yeah, I think so we know it'll bring increased cost into bear on an affordable housing project. I think the question is, we don't know what the magnitude is, and that's gonna be dependent on the number of acres that you have in play. So the one we just voted on,
Yes.
that was an economic development and an affordable housing project, of which the water deficit was a significant piece of it.
Right.
So if you take the 48,000 times $4,000, who's better at math on the fly with me?
Don't have me doing it.
Becky?
It's more than that's in my wallet.
So on that project, if you did that, the impact would be
48 acres times, say, 3,000.
3,000. Yeah, I know. 48. So that would increase that by 144,000 on that particular 48 acre project, which is an economic development and an affordable housing mixed in this. That's 48 acres based on that number. So that's the question is, smaller acreage, smaller impact, but that's what we have to look into.
And it also varies based on the piece of ground and what the deficits are on that property. 'Cause not all property has the same deficit. Some have greater. Actually, the Irwin Thomas property has pretty good historic water rights. Again, very old bonus ditch water that we got. And it was left with 1 acre foot of deficit. Many times it can be upwards of 2 acre feet per deficit.
Right.
So then double that in that scenario, if there's 2 acre feet, 96, and then you.
So, but we can analyze all of that for you to give you that whole picture, if that's helpful. If it's not, we're busy doing other things too, but.
So, just before I give up the floor, I want to make sure that we've got the parliamentary thing right, because that's my blind spot, and I am always screwing it up. So, whether this amendment passes or fails, we still get to vote on the main item, and at that time, a motion to defer it so that there could be additional analysis would be in order. Is that correct, Mayor Pro Tem or Eugene?
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney, that would be correct. This is an amendment to the council agenda item, and so if that fails, the council agenda item still needs action.
Right, or if it succeeds, the council agenda item still needs action.
Yes.
All right, very good, thank you.
All righty, Councilmember Peck, please.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah.
I want to thank the Water Department, your division, Dale, for all the work you've done. You've done an incredible job, I have to admit. But You know, we have had conversations with the Windy Gap when the water board brought that back, and they wanted a lot more. And so it's an advisory board, and they're great. And then the other subjects about the impact on affordable housing. Well, we hear all the time that people can't build here for all kinds of reasons. So to me, that's anecdotal, to be quite honest, because I'm not in the planning department. But if you are, and I think that it would be a good idea to bring back more data, I would like to know how many, two things probably aren't important. Tell me if they're not. So how many development rights water rights do we get transferred versus cash in lieu? Just percentage wise?
Councilmember Peck, I can't get you a percentage wise. In the past, we've actually had minimal cash in lieu. We probably went 40 years with getting only very small amounts of cash in lieu because there was a lot of native basin water rights that could be dedicated as non-historical. That's actually been used up pretty much. And so I would say we're probably 2/3 of the water now is being cash in lieu as opposed to non-historical. There's still quite a bit of non-historical held by some of in the development community, but any new developments that are coming in, because of the low price, because of the price that they're paying cash in lieu, and so I would still expect a considerable amount of cash in lieu.
Over the transfer?
Over transfer of non-historical water rights, because there just isn't a lot out there left to buy up.
Okay. And my other question would be, and I let me see how to phrase this. We, as I said, from the development community, they always come before us and say it's too expensive to build here. So my curiosity would be, from the planning department, I guess, how many, just off the top of your head later when you bring back data, how many developments have left because of the water cash in lieu? Is that a huge thing for developers to leave?
Councilmember Peck, I'm honestly not aware of anybody that's left because of that, because honestly, Longmont, our utility costs and rates are lower.
They're in line with,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and I have not heard that. I used to hear that, probably maybe 20 years ago. Have not heard that in quite some time, though.
So that's not really a big impact on the loss of development at this point in time?
I'd say that's correct.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to support the amendment then. I was actually going to ask for it to be a little higher, but I will go with Councilwoman Christensen's amendment.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Christensen.
Gosh, I'm sort of thinking of withdrawing it. That's why we're here to talk. Now, actually, it didn't occur to me until I was sitting here. We don't have much agriculture left in Longmont. But what effect would this have? Are they paying this? Don't they have water rights? Or what effect would this have on the agricultural community? Because I don't want to affect either the agricultural community, what's left of it, or affordable housing.
Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Christensen, that's something that's obviously on our mind as well.
Yeah.
That Longmont, I'm proud to say, has not done what other cities have done and go out and dry up areas distant from their community.
Right.
But instead, again, tried to live on the water rights that are within our community boundaries,
Right.
and then to supplement that with projects that we have to build, whether it's Windy Gap or Button Rock Reservoir, right?
Right.
So saying that, if you do drive people to go after the non-historic water. One that'll
Right.
come to my mind is Lake McIntosh.
Yeah.
A lot of that is held by the farmers east of Longmont. And they may sell.
Right, because you were talking about how if the rate goes up, then developers will try to buy up other little stranded things and things like that. So,
And we can bring this back and get more information for you all, if you would like.
well, that would seem prudent to me, given how, yeah, well, I could either withdraw this and see if anybody else wants to bring it forth, or I could ask for more information. I think, I don't know.
You can withdraw and we can still ask for more information.
That's true. Okay, let's do that. I will withdraw my motion and to amend it and ask for more information on it. Okay, thanks.
So I just want to jump in real quick. I haven't said anything on the subject just yet. And that was what I was going to say is I feel that I'm not necessarily opposed to possibly raising that fee in lieu, but I don't feel that we necessarily have proper background information and due diligence to accurately do that and change the recommendation of the water board in this circumstance. So I would prefer us do either in a study session or a pre-session, a deeper dive into the methodology behind setting that rate, as well as if there, let's say, a lot of times staff will bring us a range of options, right? And so this is, if we set it high, this is what we'd likely see. If we set it in the middle, this is what we'd likely see. If we set it right where the water board says they want it, or they would they think it's appropriate, what that means as well. And so I think that would be more beneficial and prudent for the council to consider before we start amending these rates. And so that's just my opinion on it. And it also seems that, if I remember correctly from the communication, as well as what you were saying, that the water board looks at this quarterly. And so it seems like there's plenty of opportunity. It won't necessarily have to wait a whole nother year if we do end up wanting to change that. And so I think that provides us more flexibility, as far as what we end up deciding. And so, Council Member Martin, please.
Oh, thank you. So I would like to ask one more question before I make the other motion, which is there any particular urgency in scheduling this? Because, we have asked for, some study quantities, and maybe just casting a wider policy net than the water board had done, because they're, the calculation they went through was accurate in terms of maintaining the status quo. I guess what I'm asking is, should there be an urgency associated with this? Do we want to make the determination soon, or could we wait a whole quarter if we had to?
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Martin. My thought on this thing is increase it tonight. That's never going to hurt, right? Move the thing up, give us direction to do that further analysis, and before and do it within this 3-month time period, right? And do that work with the water board and bring you back a range, as Mayor Pro Tem identified, with the pros and cons and consequences of whichever policy we think is best for Longmont. But you have an opportunity to increase it now, which is something I'd recommend doing, as opposed to leaving it even lower, right?
Right.
So, if that helps, and then between now and that third quarter, get the work done. And I'm volunteering Ken here, and come up with that policy discussion where you guys can look it over and then give us that direction on changes we'd like to make.
Okay, well then, let's let Councilmember Member Christensen reintroduce her amendment? Because if it turns out that it was not the best thing to do to raise it even a little more.
What I was suggesting was.
Oh, just leave it
Raise it as it was in the packet.
in the packet.
And
Okay.
then direct us to do that analysis to consider whether or not to adjust it differently with a different policy.
I see.
Over the next couple of months.
Okay, well then, I move adoption of item A as written.
All right, we have a motion from Councilmember Martin for approval of, let's see, let me get back here. Resolution 2021-77, a resolution of the Longmont City Council establishing the fee for cash in lieu of water rights transfers, and seconded by Councilmember Christensen. We do have additional comment from Councilmember Hidalgo Faring, please.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. You know, and it's more of a request that as you bring back some, you know, list of pros and cons to raising it, keeping it the same, I have no intention of supporting anything that will lower it, but, but, you know, looking at those pros and cons, I really want to also have, you know, get feedback on the impact to the residents. If we do raise it, are they getting, you know, are they getting impacted in their, like by lower rates? Is this something that can be transferred over to that area? So, because there was a claim that I heard that said, you know, and you kind of spoke to it about the subsidizing developers at the backs of the residents. But, you know, I'm not sure if that's how that works. So if you could go either explain that now or provide context later.
I can explain it quickly, and we will
Thank you.
hit that issue as well. The quicker answer is we can't take impact fees to offset rates. That's the big no-no, whether it's an SDF or it's a cash in lieu. That we cannot do. However, I'm also confident that our analysis will show that the fees that we're charging and the policies that we're doing are protecting the ratepayers from having to subsidize that further. But let us analyze that, and then you can hit us with that if you don't agree.
Okay, thank you.
So Councilmember Christensen, you have spoken twice on this issue. Okay. We do have a motion on the table. Let us vote. The motion passes 5-0 with Councilmember Waters and Mayor Bagley absent. Thank you. I will, if you want to ring back in, so you can talk about item B, the climate action policy statement. Let's see here. There we go. Yep, go ahead.
I would move Resolution 2021-78. I would, however, ask for us to get some information about how we're going to implement this. And also, I would like some data on what we have in the way of gas lines. How many people actually have gas lines to their houses, have their houses heated and cooled by gas furnaces, or use gas stoves and ovens. I think that's information that LPC could get us as to the scope of what it would take to electrify everything. So I would just like to see what the strategy is for implementing this resolution now. What happens if we approve this? Who does this?
All right,
How does
well,
it happen?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Looks like
Okay.
Lisa is coming up to answer some questions. Well, I'll second it, but for some answers.
Right, Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez, council members, Lisa Knobloch, Sustainability Program Manager. And to speak to your question, Councilmember Christensen, the CC4CA policy statement is the annual policy statement that is put out by the Colorado Communities for Climate Action, of which we are a member. It helps drive the overall agenda of the CC4CA as a statewide organization and their policy priorities that they advocate for on the state level. So in terms of our implementation, the implementation for Longmont is to continue to pay to be a member of that organization, and I'm the staff representative for Longmont. So I participate in all of the steering committee meetings and the annual retreat that we determine the policy statement every year. So it's not on Longmont to implement every single action within that policy statement. It just sets the overall guiding policy direction and priorities for the CC4CA. And with regards to your second question, the data on the gas lines, I would have to follow up with folks from LPC to see if we have that specific data. And also to remind council members that we did just kick off the electrification planning process that you have all had some updates on, that's being led by LPC. And Susan Bartlett, who's heading that up, will continue to provide you all updates on that process, in which a lot more information and data regarding natural gas use and electrification, building electrification, will be coming through in that process.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Mayor Pro Tem. At least I didn't call you Mayor Coombs. Yeah, I originally pushed my button to also remind everyone that we're about to start the Beneficial Electrification Committee, and part of that effort is scratching around and seeing what kind of electric service the different neighborhoods have, which I've already been scratching around to try to find out. I know anecdotally that there is a small number of homes that were actually built all electric, very small, one neighborhood during a natural gas shortage. I don't think anybody has any data on how many individuals have completely electrified their homes just under their own steam, but I'm pretty sure that we know that Excel didn't remove the gas lines from any of them. They just closed them off. I don't know that we need to go any further into that, but what I would do say is that in support of this, it's an information source, and we're going to be entering an area of relatively rapid change. And so all of the information we can get as input to making those decisions is important, and I support it for that reason.
All right, thank you very much. There's a motion on the floor to approve Resolution 2021-78, a resolution of the Longmont City Council to approve the Colorado Communities for Climate Action 2021 policy statement. Seeing no further dialogue or discussion, can I have a vote, please? The motion passes 5-0 with Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Waters absent. All right, Polly, we're on to F now, if you'd like. There you go.
All right. So, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So this is a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between the city and Boulder County Housing and Human Services for parent education services. And this has to do with a very good program that I think needs to be expanded. And so what I wanted to do was to help fund what's called, I can't remember, family providers of childcare. I wanted to read some information because I believe that a lot of our city does not really understand the depth of the problem of childcare. And I have tried to, in vain, elicit some interest on the part of the business community to be supportive of this and understand the depth of the problem. Two-thirds of, what I'm reading from is information from the Hightower Lowdown, which has lots and lots of, it's by Jim Hightower in Texas, and he has a raft of researchers and fact checkers. So two-thirds of our kindergarten kids have both parents in the workforce. So childcare is essential, and it's not all going to be provided by daycare, by professional daycare providers. Some of it is going to be by family and friends. So it's very, very important that we really pay attention to the childcare crisis in this country. Nationwide, the annual cost for a 4-year-old's daycare averages $13,000 in 28 states and District of Columbia. $13,000. So somebody who's making minimum wage at $12 an hour times roughly 2,000 hours a year is making $26,000 before tax. After tax, they're making about $20,000. So if they're trying to pay $13,000 in daycare, you tell me how they're going to do that without us helping them, without businesses helping them. We have 12 million single parents in this country. 9 million of the 12 million are single mothers who are already making like 80,000 or 80%. They're being penalized 20% of their income because they're female. So we have a really, really horrible problem. So here's some information I just found out today. In 1943, the United States led the world in providing daycare. The Lanham Act was passed in 1943. It treated child care as a core component of our nation's infrastructure, key to a unified war effort. It set up and staffed a publicly subsidized network of more than 3,000 Lanham Act preschool centers all across the country. They were open to all, although one wonders if that was actually true. But anyway, for about 50 cents a day, which is equivalent to $8 today, a child could get 12 hours of quality care. The fee included lunch and snacks. The centers operated all day, year-round, reaching families in 47 states and aimed at a 1-to-10 teacher-student ratio. We did that before. Why can't we do that now? Why? The equivalent, so at 50 cents a day then, which was equivalent to $8 a day now, would be roughly 40 hours or $40 a week times, well, that makes $160 a month. Or times 12 makes it $1,920 a year, as opposed to what most people are paying, $13,000 a year. Why are we not taking care of our children and the people who take care of our children? We deserve better. Our kids deserve better, and so I'm really happy to see that we are doing this small amount of support for one portion of what our country needs. Anyway, this is part of our infrastructure. It's a fundamental facility and system serving the country. It is not an option. It is particularly not an option for those of us who've been single parents who have no other option except to work and take care of our kids and have someone else take care of our kids. So, that being said, I move Resolution 2021-83. Do I have a second?
All right, thank you. There's a motion on the floor to approve Resolution 2021-83, moved by Councilmember Christensen, seconded by Councilmember Hidalgo Faring. It's for a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between the city and Boulder County Housing and Human Services for parent education services. Is there any further dialogue? Seeing none, let's have a vote, please. All right, the motion passes 5-0 with Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Waters absent. Moving on to item number 12, general business. We will now recess as the Longmont City Council and convene as the Board of Commissioners of the Longmont Housing Authority. Can I get a motion, please? Thank you. It has been moved by Councilmember Peck and seconded by Councilmember Martin to recess as council and convene as the Board of Commissioners of Longmont Housing Authority. A vote. We can do a voice vote. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. The motion passes 5-0 with Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Waters absent. We are now in session as the Board of Commissioners of Longmont Housing Authority. Item A, Longmont Housing Authority Board of Commissioners Resolution. Do we have a staff presentation? It appears so.
Yes, we do, Commissioners. My name is Karen Roney. I am the Community Services Director for the City of Longmont. And I wanted to just identify that on your places this evening, we did place a copy of the of a summary of this communication. I wrote up the communication along with many other things and did not upload it into the council packet. So we placed a hard copy on your desk, and Don so generously made sure that was uploaded into the packet, so it is available on the website. So I'm going to spend just a few minutes. Is that right? Should I keep going? All right. So I will take a few minutes and provide an overview of why we're here this evening and about the resolution. And then if commission members have specific questions that they would like to ask, I will do the best to answer those. Eugene, our city attorney, will step in to help with that. So this issue is really around asking City Council to adopt a resolution for us to submit to the Housing and Urban Development Department a waiver of their conflict of interest rules in regard to our city manager, Harold Dominguez, also serving as the interim executive director of the Longmont Housing Authority. Early in this year, one of the things that we wanted to do is to make sure that we were communicating to HUD about our process and what we were doing in terms of the city's relationship with the Longmont Housing Authority and how we were progressing and what our intent was. And in the conversation that we had with them early in 2021, the HUD representatives talked a little bit about that they really wanted to go, they appreciated having the update, and they also wanted to go back and check the rules of conflict of interest as it relates to the Housing Choice Voucher Program to determine if our city manager wearing two hats created a conflict of interest according to those rules. And the citation of the rules is in your your commissioner packet. So I will time out. Sorry, I thought I could just bing, but it's not working. Not working.
Taking a brief break, apparently. Yeah, let's start moving back towards our seats. We shall resume. All right, looks like you can start back up again.
Okay,
there.
great. Thank you, Commissioner Rodriguez. So what we, so in essence, what the, what's in your packet is a copy of the letter that we did receive from the HUD representative for Region 8, outlined that she believed that there was a conflict of interest with our city manager serving two roles, and also indicated in that letter that we had the opportunity to provide a good cause statement to request a waiver of what they perceived as conflict of interest in order for Harold to continue in his dual role. So what we do have in the packet is our several-page good cause statement, and I would be happy to go over key points if you would like me to. But I think in the end, what we, as staff, we certainly understand what HUD's interpretation is. We happen to think differently about that, and that is really what we outlined in our good cause statement. So we, we do understand what their interpretation, but we wanted to make sure that we offered up our own interpretation in our good cause statement for why we believe it's really important and vital to the continued operation of the Longmont Housing Authority to have our city manager serve as the interim executive director of the Longmont Housing Authority organization. So what we did outline in the good cause statement were our responses as it relates to Harold's role as far as, managing the Housing Choice Voucher Program, because this is really about the Housing Choice Voucher Program. It's not about any other aspect of the LHA operations. We also talked about the, what would be the impact if Harold stepped away from being the interim executive director of the Housing Authority. We also tried to outline the value that Harold being in that role has had on the Longmont Housing Authority, particularly in the short term and leading us to a more sustainable future. And so we basically outlined all of that in the packet. I would be absolutely more than happy to go over any items that we included in our good cause statement, and what we would be asking for the Board of Commissioners here this evening is to adopt a resolution that would authorize staff to proceed in submitting a letter with a good cause statement to Housing and Urban Development, requesting a waiver of the conflict of interest rule so our city manager can continue to do the fine work that he is doing as the interim director of the Longmont Housing Authority. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I don't really have questions. I think it has been obvious to all of us in the short time that we've been acting as the board, and even before that, during the transitional period, that things have improved, and especially with regard to housing choice vouchers. We know that there were pretty serious problems in the past about the administration, and we have every reason to believe that that is improving, and that while it is difficult for Mr. Dominguez and other people who are supporting him in this endeavor, that it is being done for a good cause, that we are approaching being able to return to a new normal faster than we ever have before. And that, I certainly, as a member of the commission, support a waiver and think we should move forward with it.
Thank you, Commissioner Peck.
Thank you. I don't really have I do have a question of Harold, though. I just want to say this is your chance to get out. Do you want us to okay this waiver or not? Yes, I approve it. I think it's a good idea. And thank you for all the work you've done.
Thank you, Commissioner Christensen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez. I wholeheartedly support this waiver. It is for a good cause. I would urge you to emphasize that this is an interim position. This is to transition the housing authority, which was having, I don't know a graceful way to put it, but having been on the board for 6 years and having spent the entire time complaining about the way it was run, this is the only time it's being run well, and it's because of the two of you and Kathy and Molly and everybody else was involved with it. I would emphasize that this is an interim and a transitional position. It is necessary to transition it away from a fiscally unsound situation. And in the short amount of time that you have been doing this, which I know must seem like not a very short amount of time, it must seem like you've been doing this forever. But you have improved it enormously. All of you have improved it enormously, especially Harold. And I'm very grateful personally because it's helped out 400 families and 400 people rather. So I would emphasize those things, that it has, in a short amount of time, it has transitioned away from a fiscally troubled institution and organizationally, I'm not sure I would use the word chaotic, but I would say organizationally disorganized organization, and that it has done nothing but good, and it's really essential for this to continue. It is truly a cause for good.
Commissioner Rodriguez, I don't know what to call you, Pro Tem. I don't know what you are as a chair.
I think chair would be
the
appropriate.
Chair. So chair, so I appreciate those kind words, and I think what we really realized and what we also try to include in the good cause document is that it really was a systemic issue, and so the people that were working at the Longmont Housing Authority, and particularly when Jillian stepped into her role as the executive director of the Housing Authority in 2018, that it was just because of all the system and operational challenges, good people, and really was very, very hard to be successful the way things were organized and operated. And so, that was one of the key reasons that we did decide to, and the board of directors at that point in time decided to really not repeat what had happened in 2018 when Jillian stepped in to a system that was really still needed some really needed to be addressed and looked at and assessed. And so that was one of the key factors in making the recommendation to invite Harold to take on that role of the interim executive director, so that we had a much, much better opportunity and chance to launch the housing authority of the future that we had all envisioned, you as the commissioners, with a much stronger foundation. And so that's really a key point to making sure that that Harold can remain in that role. If he cannot, well, we just want to make sure he remains in that role. Yeah.
All right, Commissioner Peck.
Thank you. I move that we adopt the resolution to submit the request for a waiver of HUD's conflict of interest rules and direct staff to submit the good cause document to HUD.
Thank you. We have a motion to pass resolution LHA 2021-05 by Commissioner Peck and seconded by Commissioner Christensen. Seeing no further discussion, can I have a vote, please?
Yep. It got tiny on my screen.
All right, the motion passes 5-0 with Commissioner Waters and Chairperson Bagley absent.
Chairperson Rodriguez, I was intentionally silent during that conversation, but based on the nature of it. What I did want to clarify is really on the HCV issues, I don't touch those on a daily basis just because it's really about files and the review of the files only. If there's an issue, do they start escalating it up? So when we talk about this and it being very focused on HCV, the majority of the work's actually on the operations and the development side that we've been doing. So I wanted to make sure you all knew that. I just didn't want to engage in the conversation pending the vote.
Thank you, Director Dominguez. At this time, can I get a motion to adjourn as the Board of Commissioners of the Longmont Housing Authority and reconvene as the Longmont City Council? All right. It's been moved by Commissioner Martin and seconded by Commissioner Hidalgo Faring. Can I get a vote, please? Motion passes 5-0 with Commissioner Bagley and Commissioner Waters absent. We are now reconvened as the Longmont City Council. Moving on in general business to item B, Resolution 2021-86, a resolution of the Longmont City Council concerning a potential conflict of interest regarding the Longmont Housing Authority.
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. I'll give a brief introduction for this item. It's really the parallel item to the action that the Housing Board just took. The finding by HUD of a potential conflict of interest triggered our purchasing code, which has prohibitions against contemporaneous employment and conflicts of interest, but it also has a procedure by which those conflicts could be waived. The entity which can waive that conflict is the city manager, but given that the city manager is the subject of the conflict, we thought it would be best if city council consider that waiver request, and we are substituting the city manager in, or the city council in for the city manager in that waiver process. The Longmont Municipal Purchasing Code also requires certain written findings, which are in your resolution, and it just tidies up the other hat that he's wearing as city manager instead of the interim executive director. Happy to answer any other questions you would have.
Seeing none at this time, I will move Resolution 2021-86, a resolution of the Longmont City Council concerning a potential conflict of interest regarding the Longmont Housing Authority. All righty. It was seconded by Councilmember Hidalgo Faring. Seeing no further discussion, can I have a vote, please? Motion passes 5-0 with Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Waters absent. Moving along. General business item C, presentation about the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, also known as ARPA, and local recovery fund eligibility. I take it we have a staff presentation.
Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, I'm going to introduce Peter Gibbons, who's going to be presenting on this item. One of the things I wanted to tell you is this is really the start of the conversation, and Peter's going to go over some technical components, and when we get to the end, I'm going to give you some thoughts that we've pulled together based on potential uses of ARPA funds, so you all can start thinking about that. The key piece that we're really wanting to focus on tonight is I think there's some misconceptions in multiple places, and not with you all, but just what I've seen and received from the community members about what people want us to spend the ARPA funds on. And those rules are not finalized, but they are giving us guidance. And I think people thought the way that it was presented nationally was that you could use it on almost anything. The answer is you can't. And there's some very specific parameters that we have to follow. So Peter's going to talk about that. And then we're going to end with talking about a few points to get some feedback from you all and then let you all think about it. The one thing I want to say about Peter and doing this, obviously you've seen Peter in the flood recovery work and the work that he did with FEMA. He's really turned into, I would say, a county-wide, probably a northern Colorado resource in terms of this topic, and a lot of my colleagues are actually calling Peter to get this type of information and get guidance at least on what he's seeing in this. And so I do consider Peter to be probably one of the most knowledgeable folks in this arena. When I combine that with Molly O'Donnell and the work that she and Kathy are doing on DR, we have a really great team. And so Peter's always pretty good about whopping me on the head and saying you can't do this. And so I just wanted to let you know that as you're going through this presentation, because he's an invaluable resource.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Harold, for the accolades. I appreciate it. I'm going to start my presentation here. All right. So good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez and members of council. I am Peter Gibbons. I am your recovery manager and an emergency management coordinator for the city. Tonight I'm presenting an overview of the American Rescue Plan Act from a recovery perspective in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Including a review of the eligibility provisions of the $12.9 million recovery fund we received from the U.S. Treasury. By the end of the presentation, I aim to provide a clearer picture of how we can spend this fund so we can begin work on our recovery spending plan. In this presentation, I will go over a recovery-centered view of the broader ARP Act's provisions, state and local fiscal recovery fund eligibility review, and gather ideas for feedback and planning for our next steps. In the ARPA overview, I will only cover the bigger picture of the Act in context of our recovery needs. The statement shown on my slide frames what the Act is intended to do, which is to provide additional relief to address the continued impact of COVID-19 on the economy, public health, state and local governments, individuals, and businesses. The emphasis here is on the key sectors, including local governments. From a recovery perspective and the view from Longmont, the Act has two arms, including the $12.9 million state and fiscal recovery fund that we are working with. And the other provisions in the Act are substantial, which I will address in the next slide. So visually breaking the Act into two pieces for simplicity and to get a sense for the scale, the Act is a $1.9 trillion hybrid recovery stimulus fund. Around 80% of ARPA is for the numerous other and specific provisions. And the most commonly known provision is the stimulus checks that went out to individuals. It includes specific line items for other recovery and stimulus actions, including those that you can see in the examples section on this diagram, which includes things like housing retention, public health investments, utility billing assistance, and so on. The state and local fiscal recovery fund is the next piece, and that is shown on the right. For the purpose of this presentation, I will call this the local fund or the local allocation, since SLFRF is notably hard to say. This fund is about 18% of the Act's total funding, and Longmont's $12.9 million allocation is part of this local recovery fund. Our current state of working with this fund includes actions taken and next steps. Some of those actions include the ARPA local allocation was applied for and awarded. The first half of our funding has been received. The recovery planning process is in motion, and we've started to develop our project management structure. Some of the next steps include defining our local area recovery needs and priorities. We need to allocate ARPA funds to each of those priorities by dollar amount or percentage, and then we need to finalize our spending projects and plans and begin our implementation. There are numerous provisions in ARPA for specific recovery activities. Some examples include housing assistance, including rent, mortgage, and utility bills, child care and family support, investment in public health facilities and providers, or local business assistance and revitalization. And the reason for looking at these tributary funds is that they offer an opportunity to go after specific funds that we need to address known needs in the community while protecting our local fund for more transformative projects. There are numerous provisions for specific recovery activities, which I frequently refer to as tributary provisions. These are separate from the local allocation and are to be applied for separately. There is potential strategy to be had for longer-term resiliency work and to maximize our local allocation for investment in the community. And there are challenges, including the process of identifying, evaluating, and acting on the variety of opportunities. Each provision is also uniquely framed to the lead agency and the specific need. Now let's look at the SLFRF, the local allocation, and some of the paths we can take to spend our fund. So what is the SLFRF? The statement that heads the fund guidance says, the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds provide a substantial infusion of resources to help turn the tide in the pandemic, address its economic fallout, and lay the foundation for a strong and equitable recovery. After drilling into the guidance, I found that this statement to be generally accurate, and the slides, my next slides will help to illustrate that. From a recovery and fund management perspective, there are basically three paths to spending this fund eligibly. And when I talk about eligibility, my intent is to convey spending the fund with intent of keeping it through the entire audit cycle to reduce risk to future generations of Longmont taxpayers. The first path is the safe harbor spending categories, which my attachment on my council communication goes into greater detail on what that means, and I will cover some of those topics in my next slides. Path 2 are equity-focused projects in qualified census tracts, and if there are any questions about what those are, where those are, we can address those as well. The third path is a unique project proposal. And I would note that there are expanded definitions of each of these in the guide that I provided in the council comm, just to reiterate. In general terms, and to the bigger question, and to the bigger picture question of what can we spend SLFRF on, first, and in general, anytime we step outside the safe harbor spending categories and outside of the incentivized areas, that is QCTs, we see a steep increase in compliance study and data curation requirements in order to ensure that those are eligible. Second, the fund is flexible around response and recovery and equity-centered spending, but is not a blank check, as Harold mentioned before. So more specifically, there are specific categories of eligibility, including those shown. These are the safe harbors, the first path of spending that I noted. There are other ways to make a project eligible if they are outside these categories, as long as they meet the Treasury's criteria for pandemic-related and equity-centered projects. A primary takeaway of this slide is that the categories are extensive, and even this is a reduced look at what the categories are. This is a starting point for pairing our community recovery needs with the SLFRF as a potential funding source. Some of those categories, as shown on the slide, include things like response and prevention costs, local government services, including public health and safety staff labor, some infrastructure investment, some forms of individual assistance, childcare and welfare, and services, programs, and other assistance for disproportionately impacted communities, including affordable housing development. It can include small business assistance or assistance to nonprofit organizations. And as I mentioned before, other options are available via the third path that I mentioned, via proposal.
So I think I want to spend a little bit of time on infrastructure investment, because I think that gives a good example of the nuances in this. And a lot of people are talking about this. So specifically on infrastructure investment, and by the way, I forgot, Jim's been a phenomenal piece of this too. Anytime money's involved in the work he's getting with GFOA, it's another good point to bring into this. But when we look at infrastructure, Peter, they're really talking about water, wastewater, and broadband.
Some broadband, yep.
Some broadband. So a lot of folks think about, well, can we do streets and things like that? You can't. But then even when you dig into the water component of it, the example that I think it was you or Sandy gave me on the nuance on the water infrastructure had to do with the stability of the system. Is that what it was, or how did you describe that to me?
Under-resourced water systems, underfunded water systems.
Underfunded and under-resourced water systems. So, because we were thinking, well, how does Windy Gap play in this? Doesn't, based on the way that it's aligned and structured. And so that's where it really gets detailed into what is eligible and what's not eligible. Okay, sorry.
No, I appreciate it. That's a great point about the infrastructure piece. That's been a big topic of conversation regionally as we've been talking about this. So leading into the next piece, from a high-level view, the timeline for spending is basically now until the end of 2024. We may spend through 2026 with specific exceptions and requirements, including having a fully obligated project established. So we can't go beyond 2024 without having something specifically planned and with spending lined up already. We're currently reading the 2026 date as a very hard deadline and the 2024 end date as a realistic timeline for this recovery period. So moving on to opportunities and next steps. Multiple city plans already exist that align with these fund requirements, including those that pair community outreach with plan information and council approval. We can use the ARPA local allocation to reinforce our existing efforts.
So I think, is this the one where I jump in?
No, not yet. I'll give you that one in just a sec here. So to connect the complex information I went over in this presentation, here are some examples of projects we could invest this fund in that we believe would be eligible. These examples include additional affordable housing, projects in qualified census tracts, additional childcare resources, broadband opportunities, whole neighborhood projects, and other options can be evaluated for eligibility. So I'll hand off the next question and portion of this discussion to Harold. To kick off that conversation, the question that will help seed our next step is, what do you want us to know as we prepare our proposal on how to best spend the funds to invest in and transform the community? And I think with that.
Yeah, if you can go back to the previous slide.
Yep.
So one of the things that we did is we started and we did a version of a really basic look at a needs assessment and what does it really mean to us as we're looking at this money coming in. And I think one of the things that I heard clearly from my team is rarely in anyone's career do you really have this type of money to really focus on community transformation. These are transformational dollars, and so that's how we started looking at it through the process. And so when Peter talked about the other plans that were in place, one of the things we immediately went to is we know that affordable housing has been a significant discussion with you all as city council members and as commissioners. We obviously had the retreat. You had that as commissioners. And so one of the things that we really talked about in this is that we know that affordable housing is safe harbor, and so it's relatively safe. And if you get a sense as the project that you just approved on the Chrisman project where we had, I believe it was 80 units, but the 50% AMI and below, we put 1.2 million to really leverage those funds. So if you kind of take that as a model and you said, hey, can we put $6 million, that really all of a sudden gives us the opportunity to look at how we can create multiple units, which ties directly to the goals that you all talked about in terms of the development of affordable housing projects. The other component that really started coming into the conversation, and this is really touching many different avenues, is what we're seeing in terms of qualified census tracts. And so I'm going to bring a couple of different components in this. So you saw equity as being something that this is focused on. And so when we really started talking about the qualified census tract component and the equity piece is how do we really look at this fund and utilize those in terms of in qualified census tracts, work that we can do with neighborhoods to really strengthen the neighborhoods into the future, which really ties into the sustainability and resiliency work that we put together in Resiliency for All, which was actually a product of the flood. And so it really gives us an opportunity to really engage and invest in neighborhoods, to take it to, really push hard and so we can do more in neighborhoods. And then obviously you all talked about childcare. And childcare, and we heard it in the previous conversation as being something really important. You all have talked about in the budget conversations, we've talked about looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000, depending on how this looks like, but actually engaging in, and we talked about this with Peter, really engaging in a study that allows us to get in and truly understand what the need is within the community from a quantitative standpoint, and the range of that need, because I think that's the thing that we've all struggled with is we see a part of the picture, but we don't see the whole picture. And so we talked to Becky about working with the folks that we did with What Works Cities and John Hopkins to figure out how much would it cost us to bring resources in to truly dig in and understand what the need is and then plan for programs associated with it. The broadband opportunities, and again, it's not just total broadband. There's components of this. But one of the things that we know is how do we capitalize and continue working with Valerie and what she did with the grant that she had from the school district in terms of the Wi-Fi access for kids that don't have the ability to have broadband, and how do we tap into that and really start looking. This really starts touching the qualified census tract work that says, can we light up parks so that we give individuals more opportunities for connection who are part of that, but then it allows us to leverage to do other things in terms of how we approach our facilities. All of that starts getting encapsulated into what we talked about as whole neighborhood projects, and how do we really work for neighborhood health, long-term neighborhood health and sustainability and resiliency. There's a lot of things we can work on, but this is really this was the crux of our conversation that said if we can really be transformational, affordable housing, really digging in and working in the qualified census tracts and talking about neighborhood work and equity work and really taking that broader vision of whole neighborhoods, and this is what it could be in the future. And that's what we wanted to start off with you all today. Leads to this question is what do you want us to know as we continue moving into this, as we prepare our proposal? What are your thoughts? What are your ideas in terms of high level, what you would like us to look at, so then we can then dig in if we need to, so that we can come back and have another conversation with you all in terms of next steps in this fund.
All right, Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. There are a couple things as you went through the presentation that I was curious about. Can we pair these funds with other goals that the city wants? For example, with affordable housing, can we pair that with our climate goals and possibly use a whole, either a new development or a whole neighborhood project to electrify a neighborhood or a new development with these funds so that it does move us into the future and meet other goals. And so that's a question, I guess, for Peter. Is there room in that to meet in those funds?
So I think because of the complexity of the guidance, it'll be best to collect these and then come back to you with some more specific responses. But my tentative response would be that these funds are incentivized to start pairing with some of those types of programs, and there are built-in elements that would allow us to do more sustainability-centered projects. But as far as the specifics and making a determination here, I'll just gather that and have to come back to you with a more detailed answer.
Okay, and along with the electrifying of the neighborhoods of possible renewable energy to get them off the grid so that running the electricity in their home does not overpower our grid. So those are two things that I want you to look at. And when we talked about childcare, it has come up often about FFN, family, friends, and neighbors, which is home childcare. And I have talked to Bob Norris for years as to why they are not getting licensed, and he says they can't afford it. But I do think that if we can use some of these funds to license daycare homes, then they would be able to take advantage of what Boulder County offers, rather than doing other things. We get more people into childcare services. So those are my two comments, if we can use funding for that.
To your first question, what I wanted to point, this chart's really important because, and I want to, not directly to your question, but I'm going to hopefully get you there. So we have 12.9 million, Boulder County has 63, and the state has 3.8 billion. What we're also trying to look at in this is, so if Boulder County, for example, has an individual assistance program, then it may not make sense for us to look at that because they're already putting their funds into it, of which our residents can take advantage of. And so we're trying to avoid the duplication on this as well. You then have to then also look at what's on the orange side of the slide, because as you talk about, well, can we do this in terms of sustainability and some of these other things? It may be where we leverage our local funds against some of these other grant programs to try to accomplish the two, because they're still building and defining what that's going to look like. And so it's really all about how do we leverage and maximize. And I think that's what we're trying to, we still don't know because they haven't given all the rules and they haven't developed the programs, but I think that's in our mind. If you will recall, when we thought we had money before a parking lot issue at Aspen Meadows Apartments, one of the things we were wanting to do was put solar on that, to the point of reducing the cost for the individuals who are living there and meeting our goal of 100% renewable. So it's how you bring these things together and what that really means. Another thing that we looked at, to your point of combining, is can we bring some of this money, for example, into the First and Main Transit program for affordable housing, but then it's tying into transportation and some of these other goals. And so those are the things we still need to dig in, but that's a great point because we're trying to figure that out.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think along those same lines, because obviously, you know, our two most immediate needs are childcare and affordable housing. But we see on this big chart that there are lots of places for that money to come from. It's also true that by 2024 and or 2026, if we are very canny about how we decide to allocate this money, the money runs out, and we have to be able to sustain whatever enterprises we have taken on. We have already in our vision the STEAM redevelopment area, and it is my possibly false understanding, but I believe that the horizontal infrastructure of the qualifying type in those areas is lacking, and could be boosted up, especially sewer, making sure that what flows into the St. Vrain is good, you know, is not water full of, you know, that's been filtered through concrete and, you know, nasty stuff like that. And it seems to me that using this money to invest in the substrate for that redevelopment area could then lower the cost of the city's ineligible redevelopment projects that are going to have to be funded through other means. Is that a reasonable assumption or not a reasonable assumption? Is that someplace that we could look at? Because if we succeed in some of those projects that will create sustaining economic impact, then that gets us over the 2024, 2026 hump.
The area to the east side of Main Street is not in a qualified census tract.
It's in
So-
everything else, but not that.
Right, because it's in enterprise zones and it's in
Yeah.
opportunity zones, and we thought because of that it was going to be in a qualified census tract. It's not actually.
No.
The area to the west side is, but then that's why the transit station, but the housing piece came into it. I think the question's maybe, and then the maybe may come into looking at some of these other funds, but I really go back to the infrastructure component and what they talked about, in that it's pretty specific and limiting to what you can do, because of at least at this point what we know. I guess is it fair to say our financial condition and the condition of our utilities is such that it's hard for us to qualify for the infrastructure funds. Is that a fair way to say it? Yeah.
You mean, so our infrastructure is not shabby enough?
Generally, that's it. So I think, the things that I think the example they used is like Flint, Michigan situation.
Oh, well, yeah.
Probably is a clear fit to this.
Yeah.
But we're not having those regulatory components and
Sure.
things like that. And so, again, maybe, but that's something we'll add and we'll look into.
So, yeah, so I guess just to take it away from something that's too specific, I do think it is important to look at ways that we can apply this to what will provide a sustaining economic impact.
All right, Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I was reading this today from the HUD website. It's the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies report on the state of the nation's housing 2021. And I would urge you to read this. It's kind of brief, but it does give you a lot of good suggestions. And I'll just read a brief thing here that says, the American Rescue Plan has provided $10 billion in mortgage relief to prevent foreclosures and delivered $350 billion in fiscal recovery funds to state, local, tribal, and territorial governments. The first step for municipalities is to develop and implement programs to assist with mortgages, rent, and evictions. And I would say also to assist with first-time home buyers. They give a lot of statistics here about, for instance, this is surprising to me, well, it shouldn't be, but because 1 in 3 Latino families is self-employed and therefore has limited access to credit. Acosta's first suggestion was to expand credit access to significantly increase the number of Latino homeowners. Increased credit access with down payment assistance programs will also benefit African American renters, the majority of whom have less than $10,000 in savings to fund a down payment. In other words, if we just keep subsidizing rental housing, we're getting nowhere. If we can get people permanently out of having to rent and into home ownership, which is being severely impacted right now by investors buying up single-family homes all over this country. We need to fight that somehow by getting humans who actually want to live in those places so that they actually have stability and can build equity for their whole lives. If we can offer more counseling, which we already do have programs to assist with mortgages, with rent and evictions, but if we built on that and built on our counseling program and offered more assistance for first-time home buyers, provided that they actually can, make the leap into home ownership, that would really solve things for the long run for a lot of families, and it would build community wealth, and it would build family intergenerational wealth, and that's one huge thing I think we could do with some of this money that would make a huge difference in the long run. They're talking about, according to one JHCS report, I don't know what that is, Providing $15,000 in down payment assistance would help up to 1 million African Americans and 470,000 Hispanic renters transition to home ownership. Imagine what that would be like. That would provide stability for those families. They wouldn't have to move every 6 months or every year, and they would be building wealth for their future. So.
All right, Councilmember Hidalgo Faring.
Thank you. And as a renter, I say here, yeah. I'd like to see programs for first-time home buyers who are public employees as well. But, so, you know, I do agree with what my fellow council members had said. I do support those priorities, as well as broadband. You know, when we started as a teacher, when we were scrambling to try to get kids connected to the internet, you know, we started the pandemic, and I had 3 kids who had access to internet. There was one time I was actually sitting outside, and I had a family of 5 kiddos on my hotspot. And it was like, this phone's strong. Well, they're trying to do their homework as I'm trying to navigate, you know, Schoology and Seesaw and all those programs for the mom. So it is a need. It's not. It's no longer a nice to have. It's essential, and I think that was one of the things we really learned through this pandemic. So one of you know, as I was reading in the packet, in one of the grants was to get the community center in Del Camino. To have the wireless internet services. So to look at something that expands, you know, in a lot of our, you know, I'm thinking of Countryside Village, Casa Esperanza, a lot of these places that have these community centers where families get together. I've done tutoring over in those areas, and if we had opportunity to address those highly impacted neighborhoods and provide some kind of that broadband wireless service in their community center, that would be something, you know, because I think about, that sustainability piece. Because the hardest thing is going to be when we pull, you know, we no longer have those funds, and you're pulling the rug out of funds that people had depended on. So if there's ways that we could expand that, but when the money's out, it's infrastructure that's in place. So that's something I'd like to add, in addition to supporting what my fellow council members had already stated. So.
I think, Dale, Countryside is one of them that I think is getting a wireless as part of this, but that's actually, that's what you did a
Awesome.
much better job at describing what we need to do.
Yeah.
But that's what we're looking at in the broadband side.
So that would be wonderful, because those are my students, so I'm always over there. That would be great.
All right, I guess just chiming in real quick, you know, I have similar concerns that we don't necessarily use this money to create programs that require a lot of ongoing funding. So it sounds almost to me like it would be probably most prudent to use them on maybe some capital improvement style projects that fall under the safe harbor various categories, but ones where, you know, it's more about getting it in the ground than it is about keeping programs going. Although I do remember conversations about, you know, from our retreat, that one of the mechanisms that makes the housing authority more solvent is the development as well. And so I can see how that will be a very useful thing possibly in considering for these funds. So I look forward to seeing more specified, you know, projects that the staff comes up with that are appropriate and eligible. But I think that you hit the nail on the head for the most part, as far as the safe harbor ones that apply most, that really align with kind of our goals and our work plan as the council. So definitely looking forward to seeing that. Is there anything else on this one?
No, I think as we look at home ownership, you know, we purchased 9 acres of property, and how we look at that, and maybe take more of a home ownership look and how we can leverage some of this to facilitate that. Because I think it is about creating for sale product in the price point that we need. And so that is something that we've also chatted about as part of this. So great information. We'll follow up on it, and then we just didn't want to get too far down the road and miss the target. And so we wanted to get your feedback on this one.
All right.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Peter, as well. So we are on final call, public invited to be heard. There's a couple folks still with us. Would you like to say anything for this round, or? Well, looks like we're all good. All right. Well, I'll then close final call, public invited to be heard. This time we'll take mayor and council comments. Any? Councilmember Christensen?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm sure everyone's tired of hearing it from me today. But anyway, we got a letter, we all got a letter, someone complaining about the fact that we were raising police salaries and that 4% was a lot, and yeah, maybe it is a lot. And it's a lot particularly when it's year after year after year after year. However, I was listening this afternoon to the police officers, the Capitol Police officers. Normally, the Capitol Police don't handle, they're used to very civil tourists. The things that happened to, I think, 150 police officers were wounded, and when you hear them explain what they went through, it is unbelievable. And I think it would, our police officers who actually are usually around here, in fact, yes, they take care of us, everybody in this room, every week. They're a silent, quiet presence, but we know they're there. And likewise, they take care of our town. They're not like regular employees. They don't have a 9-to-5 job and then go home and not worry about anything. They have, it's like people have said about war, it's, a whole lot of nothing, and then all of a sudden you can get killed. So it's not a regular job. And I think that when people cast it as, well, they're getting a lot of money, and, I really think you need to listen to what the Capitol Police have been saying and testifying in the investigation into the insurrection, because this is what our police officers face all the time. Last night there was something big thing where people were shooting. They could have been shot. The officers showed up. The night before there was something where they could have been shot. You just don't know. This is not something that I've ever been subject to, and I don't think anybody on City Council has ever put themselves in the line of being blown away. And so I think 4% is not a large amount of money to pay the people who keep us safe. So I just wanted to give a shout out to our police who really do take care of us. Thank you.
Councilmember Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd just like to add something to what Polly said, because I also agree. Remember that this increase was partially deferred, and so it's not as big a jump as it looks like. But I'd also like to remind the public how much that we are demanding from our public safety officers now. We are expecting to arrest all the illegal fireworks users and all the coal rollers. And, those things have not been demanded in the past. And, we need to understand that this is a high-pressure job that has not been particularly popular in recent years, and we need to be able to have and continue to build the quality organization that we expect So, yeah, this does not seem like an unreasonable level of compensation to me. And I think that looking at the other modifications in the contract, this is a very successful contract that's gonna, the other changes seem small, but they're gonna solve a lot of problems. So I think that advancing this was the right thing to do.
All right, seeing no further comments, city manager remarks?
Yeah, just based on that, I want to say when we evaluate this, we also look at market too, and what the market's driving in this, and just to let you know, we're seeing similar market movements on the rest of our positions as we're preparing for the budget, and this is, I mean, we're hearing it all over the place, but we're seeing it internally as well. The hiring market's changed, and I was literally just talking to Jim. A lot of my conversations today have been about this and how the market is shifting and how competitive it is now getting for positions. And just wondering what that's going to look like. And so I'm saying, you know, we're seeing this universally. And so you'll get more information when we bring the budget to you. Speaking of Jim, I'm going to call Jim up. He just issued some debt on the Windy Gap, and he's got some information for you all.
Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez, members of City Council, I'm Jim Golden, Chief Financial Officer. So this morning we had a public sale of our bonds for, as the city manager mentioned, for the Windy Gap project, raising $33 million. We had 13 bids, which is very competitive, meaning there was a lot of interest in our debt. And we had an interest rate of 1.69%, which is really, really strong. So we're really pleased with the results. And that's all I had for you.
Yes, thank you. City attorney remarks?
No comments, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, very good. I'll move to adjourn the meeting. Motion by myself, seconded by Councilmember Peck. All those in favor say yay. Yay. All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 5-0 with Mayor Bagley absent and Councilmember Waters absent. We are adjourned.